Madhu was not a happy man. Every morning he rose before the sun, marched to his yam field, and returned with nothing but calloused hands and an empty stomach. His farm was cursed, or so the villagers whispered. His goats gave little milk, his harvest was pitiful, and his house always smelled of smoke and hunger. Misfortune carved bitterness into his face. The lines on his forehead were not from age, but from scowls and complaints. When others smiled, Madhu frowned. When neighbors rejoiced, he sulked. But what made Madhu worst of all was his tongue. His words were sharp, his voice loud, and he enjoyed mocking those around him. He was a poor man, yes, but a cruel one too, and it was that cruelty that would lead him to his fate. Market day was the only time the village came alive. Women carried baskets of vegetables on their heads, babies strapped to their backs, laughter and gossip filling the air. Madhu rarely had anything to sell. His harvest was too small. But still he came, sitting idly by the well, listening, sneering. That day the women sat under the mango tree, fanning themselves and speaking about childbirth. "The twins nearly tore me apart," one woman sighed. "I thought I would die that night." "At least he survived," another said. "My cousin bled for 3 days before her baby came. She never saw the sunrise." Their voices carried sorrow, but also pride. They had survived what so many did not. But from the side, Madhu laughed. A bitter, mocking laugh that silenced them. "You women complain too much. How hard can it be to push out a child? If men gave birth, we would do it better, stronger, without the tears and screaming." The women froze. Then gasps erupted. One spat on the ground. "Madhu, may your tongue rot in your mouth. You dare mock what you cannot understand?" But Madhu only shook his head, smirking. And from that day, the joke began to spread. Madhu says men can give birth better than women. The story traveled fast. Boys whispered it in corners, young men laughed at the market, and even elders shook their heads. Madhu, the man who thinks he can give birth. Some mocked him in jest, but others watched him closely. His arrogance was too loud, his pride too heavy, and in the village people knew words had weight. Madhu only leaned into the joke. He began repeating it himself, boasting in public. "If I had to give birth, I would not cry like these women. A real man would not whimper." The women grew furious. "You will eat those words, Madhu," one shouted. "One day your pride will choke you." But Madhu only laughed, his teeth flashing in the sun. One evening, as the sky dimmed orange, Madhu carried his calabash to the well. The air was quiet. He bent to fill it when he heard footsteps behind him. An old woman stood there. Her back was bent, her hands thin as sticks, her eyes clouded, but her voice was sharp. "Madhu," she said, "your tongue is reckless. Childbirth is pain no man can measure. Mock it, and the gods will answer." Madhu smirked, water dripping from his calabash. "Let them hear me. If I must give birth myself to prove a point, then so be it." The old woman's head shook slowly. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "So be it." Then she turned and disappeared into the dusk. That night, the wind howled through the village. Doors rattled. The air felt heavier, as though something unseen had entered. The days that followed seemed ordinary, but not for Madhu. His stomach ached. At first, he thought it was food. "Too much yam," he muttered. But the pain didn't fade. At night he tossed and turned, clutching his belly, sweat rolling down his back. By the second week, he noticed something else. His stomach was swelling, slowly at first, then rounder, firmer, unmistakably like that of a woman carrying child. He tried to hide it, wrapped his cloth tighter, walked in the shadows. But the village noticed. Whispers began. "Do you see Madhu's belly? He looks pregnant." They laughed at first, but laughter soon gave way to unease, because with each passing day, his stomach only grew larger. Madhu denied it. "It's nothing," he snapped. "I am not sick." But the women shook their heads. "The gods have answered him," they whispered. "The gods are giving him exactly what he asked for." Madhu grew weaker. Nights were filled with groans that neighbors could hear through the walls of his hut. His mockery had turned to silence, and his silence to fear. Yet he refused to admit it aloud. He carried himself through the market with a forced grin, though sweat dripped down his face and his belly jutted out like a drum. The whispers grew louder. He wanted to give birth. Let him enjoy it, some women said. Others only watched in horror. This is no joke. The gods do not play. By the third week, Madhu could barely stand straight. The pain gnawed at his insides, sharp and relentless. When people greeted him, he snapped in anger. "Leave me alone. I am fine." But at night, his cries betrayed him. They pierced the quiet air, long, desperate wails that sounded nothing like the strong man he claimed to be. The old woman reappeared once more. He saw her standing at the edge of the path, staring with those clouded eyes. She said nothing this time, only raised her hand slowly, like a warning, before vanishing again. Madhu trembled. His arrogance had begun to crack. He remembered her words, so be it. And for the first time, fear clutched him. By the 10th night, he could no longer deny it. He woke to find his stomach hard as stone, swollen beyond recognition. His breaths came short. His body trembled with every step. And when he screamed in the darkness, clutching his belly, the village woke. Doors opened, torches lit. People gathered outside his hut. What they saw through the cracks in the wood made their blood run cold. Madhu was writhing on the floor, drenched in sweat, clutching his massive stomach and crying out in pain like no man they had ever seen. Something was happening to Madhu, something no man could explain. The villagers stood outside Madhu's hut, whispering in fear. His cries were sharp, tearing through the night, echoing across the compound. A man ran forward, pushed the door open, and what he saw made him stumble back. Madhu was on the floor, his belly massive and tight, his body convulsing with pain. He clawed at the ground, his voice hoarse as he begged for help. "It burns. My stomach burns." Women clutched their mouths. Men exchanged worried glances. Children clung to their mothers, wide-eyed and trembling. For the first time, Madhu did not look like a man mocking women. He looked like a man condemned. By morning, the whispers had spread through the entire village. People crowded near his hut, peeking inside, watching him writhe. Some laughed cruelly. He wanted to know what it feels like. Let him enjoy it. But others shook their heads. No, this is not right. This is not natural. The women, especially, looked at him with a mixture of pity and rage. "Now he understands," one said softly. "Now he knows." Madhu staggered outside that afternoon, clutching his swollen belly. His legs wobbled under the weight. He tried to speak, tried to laugh, but the words broke into sobs. "It's nothing. Just sickness. I will be fine." But no one believed him. His cloth clung to his stomach, stretched tight like a drum. Sweat ran down his chest. The villagers stepped back as he passed, some spitting, others crossing themselves against evil. Children pointed at him, shouting, pregnant man," and their mothers pulled them away quickly. The days grew heavier. Madhu stopped going to the farm. He could no longer bend, no longer carry anything on his back. He stayed inside, moaning, clutching his belly. His hut smelled of sweat and despair. Flies buzzed near the window. Neighbors avoided passing too close, but at night they could not ignore the sound. His screams carried across the village, louder than any woman in labor, shrill and desperate. It was a sound that raised goosebumps even on hardened men. One night, the pain grew so fierce that he crawled outside, dragging himself on his elbows, crying out into the darkness. "Help me. Someone help me." But the people only stood at a distance, torches in hand, watching. No one dared to touch him. The old woman appeared again, walking slowly to the front of the crowd. Her voice was steady. "The gods have answered him. He mocked what he did not understand. Now he carries the weight of his own words." Madhu wept. He pressed his face into the dirt and cried like a child. "Please, take it away. Please, I cannot bear it." But the old woman shook her head. "You will bear it, Madhu. You will bear it until the gods are satisfied." Then she turned and vanished once more, leaving silence behind her. The following days broke him further. His body swelled, his feet puffed, his skin stretched tight. He could not sleep, could not eat. His cries came in waves, echoing in the stillness of dawn, in the dead of night. The villagers no longer laughed. They watched in horror as his body changed. He was no longer Madhu the farmer. He was something else, something cursed. His friends stopped visiting. His relatives avoided him. Even the children no longer teased. Fear hung in the air like smoke. The village chief sent for a diviner, hoping to understand what was happening. The diviner entered Madhu's hut, stood over him, and then came out with trembling hands. "This is not a sickness of men," he whispered. "This is the judgment of the gods. He will not escape it." Madhu heard the words, and his heart sank. That night, he dreamed of shadows surrounding him, pressing their hands onto his swollen belly, whispering voices he could not understand. He woke up screaming, his hands trembling, his eyes wild. "There are things inside me," he sobbed. "Things moving inside me." His neighbors heard his cries and knew the worst was yet to come. By the end of the month, Madhu could barely stand. His stomach was enormous, his body frail beneath the weight. The villagers gathered outside his hut every night, drawn by his screams. They did not know if they were watching a man's punishment or the birth of something the world had never seen. And as the winds howled through the village once more, people whispered to each other in terror. Something was coming, something no man should ever witness. Madhu no longer looked like himself. His face was hollow, his eyes sunken, his body weak. Only his stomach grew, massive and unnatural. He lay on a mat most days, groaning, clutching his belly, tears streaming down his face. The proud farmer who once mocked women was now reduced to a pitiful shadow, crying in agony. Villagers came to stare. Some shook their heads in pity, others turned away in fear. "The gods have truly cursed him," they whispered. "No man should suffer like this." But none dared to step inside his hut. His cries had become frightening, almost inhuman. At night, the village could not sleep. His screams tore through the darkness like thunder. Women covered their children's ears. Men sat outside, staring at the stars, listening to the wails. And when the cries faded, silence felt just as terrifying because they knew the torment had not ended. It was only waiting to return. One evening, Madhu staggered out of his hut. His belly hung low, swollen and tight, sweat glistening on his skin. He fell to his knees in the dirt, clutching his stomach, gasping for breath. "Please," he cried, "help me. Something is tearing me apart inside." The villagers kept their distance. No one moved. Then a voice broke the silence. It was one of the women he had mocked at the market. She stepped forward slowly, her arms folded. "Do you remember, Madhu, how you laughed at us? How you said men would give birth better than women?" Madhu sobbed, his face pressed to the ground. "I didn't know. I didn't know." The woman shook her head. "Now you know. Now you will never forget." The old woman appeared again that night. She stood at the edge of the gathering, her cloudy eyes fixed on Madhu. "The time is near," she said. "His words have become flesh. He will carry them to the end." The crowd shivered. No one spoke. Madhu's cries filled the air again, raw and broken. Days blurred into nights. His screams grew louder, his pain unbearable. He clawed at his stomach, insisting he felt movement inside. "They're alive," he shouted. "There is something inside me." Villagers exchanged fearful looks. Some believed he carried demons. Others whispered that he was carrying children, the very thing he had mocked. Fear spread like wildfire. The village chief called a meeting. "What do we do with Madhu?" he asked. If this is the god's punishment, we cannot interfere. But if it is something darker, we are in danger." The elders argued through the night. Some said exile him, send him to the forest to suffer alone. Others said keep him here, for the god's judgment must be witnessed. By dawn, they decided to wait. "The gods have started this," the chief declared. "The gods will finish it." Madhu's condition worsened. He could no longer walk. His body trembled constantly. His belly pulsed and shifted as though something inside was alive. His screams no longer sounded like words. They were raw, animalistic, piercing. People gathered outside his hut every night, torches in hand, waiting for what would happen next. One night, a storm rolled over the village. Thunder cracked, lightning lit the sky, and the winds howled. Inside his hut, Madhu screamed louder than the storm itself. His body convulsed, his hands clutched his belly, his eyes wild with terror. "They are coming," he shrieked. "They are tearing me apart." His neighbors rushed to the door, peering through the cracks, their hearts pounding. The old woman's voice rose above the storm. "The hour has come," she cried. "He mocked what he did not know, and now he will give birth to his own shame." The villagers huddled together, trembling as Madhu's screams reached their peak. The storm raged, the wind roared, and inside the hut, something unimaginable was about to happen. But no one dared step forward. No one dared help him. They only watched, they only listened, and they waited for the unthinkable. The storm shook the village, lightning flashing across the sky, thunder rolling like drums of war. Inside his hut, Madhu writhed on the ground, his body drenched in sweat, his belly stretched beyond reason. His screams cut through the night, louder than the storm, a sound that froze every heart. "Help me," he cried. The villagers stood outside, torches trembling in their hands. They watched through the cracks of his hut, their faces pale with horror. Madhu clawed at the earth, his body arching in pain. His breaths came sharp and broken. He gritted his teeth until blood ran from his mouth. The veins on his neck bulged, his stomach convulsed violently. "It's inside me," he screamed. "It wants to come out." His cries became shrill, inhuman, echoing like the howl of a dying animal. Then suddenly, silence fell. The storm quieted. The villagers held their breath. A cry pierced the air, not Madhu's voice, but the cry of a newborn child. Women gasped. Men stepped back in shock. Another cry followed, then another. The hut filled with wails, one baby, then two, then three. Madhu screamed again, his body shuddering, blood pooling on the ground. The cries multiplied. 4, 5, 6, until finally 7 newborns lay on the floor, slick with blood, screaming into the night. The villagers stood frozen, unable to speak. No one had ever seen such a thing. Madhu lay beside them, trembling, his eyes wide with terror, his body broken. His chest rose and fell, each breath shallow. He turned his head weakly, staring at the infants. Tears streamed down his face. "Please, take them away, take them away." The old woman stepped forward. She entered the hut slowly, her shadow stretching across the floor. She looked down at Madhu, then at the 7 children crying beside him. Her voice was low, steady. "The gods have spoken. Let no man ever again mock a woman's pain." She picked up one of the babies, cradled it gently, then turned to the crowd. "This is the weight of arrogance. This is the cost of pride." The women gathered the infants carefully, whispering prayers, their faces pale with fear. Some believed the children were spirits, not human at all. Others thought they were the living curse of Madhu's words. One by one, the babies were carried out of the hut, their cries echoing into the storm. Madhu remained on the ground, his body trembling, his breath faint. Some say he died that very night, his strength gone, his spirit shattered. Others say he lived, but wandered the village as a broken man, empty, childless, haunted by the cries of the 7 he brought into the world. for no one knew what became of the infants. Some claimed they vanished by dawn, taken by spirits. Others whispered they grew up elsewhere, carrying with them the mark of their cursed birth. But one truth remained, told again and again by every tongue in that village. Madhu had mocked the pain of women. He had dared the gods to test him, and the gods answered in the most impossible, mind-shattering way. He gave birth, not to one child, but to 7. And from that day forward, no man in that village, nor in any village nearby, ever mocked the agony of childbirth again. Parents told their children the tale by firelight. Mothers repeated it as a warning. Fathers lowered their voices when they spoke of it. And as the years passed, the story never faded. It lived on, as sharp and haunting as the night it happened. They called it the tale of the man who gave birth to 7 children. And every time it was told, those who listened felt a chill, as though the cries of the 7 could still be heard in the distance.